Yo, what up? What up? Source here. Welcome to another episode of Source and Company. I'm your host, Source, of course. As always, you can follow me on Instagram at Smitty Source, Twitter at Smitty Source. The show's Instagram is Source, the letters NCO podcast _RVA. And you can check out the Source and Company YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., to watch or listen. All right. So today's company is the Superintendent of Suffolk Public Schools. He is also the author of The Teacher's Lounge, which we will talk about that. That's his first, I doubt it will be the last, but first book. And he is the he has an educational consulting firm, which is Schools That Inspire. You can check him out at schoolsthatinspire.com. And also he was recently appointed by Governor Northam to the Education Commission for the state of Virginia. Today's company, Dr. John Gordon. What up, bro?
How you doing there, Mike Source? Good to see you, man.
Yeah, I'm good, bro. How you been?
Life's been busy. Life's definitely been busy, but it's been good. You know, family is healthy. Everyone's doing well. I'm glad to be able to join you today.
Excellent, excellent. So, well, first, happy holidays to you. I don't know what you celebrate, but happy holidays. We are in the middle of the holiday season after Christmas, before New Year's. And I'm sure this will come out this week before New Year's hits. So happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you too, man. Yeah, you need to drive by my house. I live right around the corner from me. You need to see all these Christmas decorations we get out in the yard. I got some Star Wars stuff on the side of the house. You would love it.
Star Wars. I would not love it. But I got to ask you my question, which, like I told you, I started the show within the COVID space. Right. So I got to ask, how has COVID been for you personally and even professionally, if you want to get into that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, on the personal side, one of the things I always tell my school community is you never know how COVID is going to affect families. And it's been an adjustment, you know, for everybody. You know, Kennedy and Simone are virtual learning. Simone really misses the social side of going to school. She's a sixth grader at home and misses her friends. So we try to set up some, you know, times where they can be online together. She may have a friend over every now and then after we get a chance to talk to the family, just to kind of check to see where everyone's been. You know, Kennedy, on the other hand, she's a junior at Deep Run. She's in the Center for Information Technology program. She loves virtual learning. Gets up, brushes her teeth, puts on clothes majority of the time, and then just stays in the room. You know, she's more of the introvert. Simone definitely has my personality more. She's more of the extrovert. And so, you know, the interesting part is I kind of think about what they're going through when I'm coming up with ideas for, you know, Suffolk Public Schools. And, you know, the biggest thing right now is just trying to see how can you make virtual learning better. That's really all you can focus on, you know, regardless of whatever happens. If you're going to be coming back to school 1 day to 2 days or whatever, I seriously doubt, unless something dramatic happens, that school divisions in Virginia will be 5 days a week, all of them, you know.
It won't be a minute.
Yeah.
So you say you take into account your children as far as how to deal with the community of children that you work for, however you want to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Suffolk. How long? Well, let's see. You got that job what, a year ago?
Started October 14th, 2019. So I really only had 5 months of normal school year before shoes shut down in March. And, you know, I had just allowed our kids to bring their Chromebooks home at the secondary level. I wish I would have had the foresight to do it, you know, pre-K through 5 too. But it was literally February, and I was like, why aren't we taking these Chromebooks home? That's my first initiative, our SPS Connect program. And it was like just in time, you know. And then you had to make sure that you kind of came up. We were using basically an online learning platform called Edgenuity, because I wanted my secondary students to continue to get some new material. And because my elementary kids didn't have their Chromebooks at home at the time, they do now. I basically was sending home packets, literacy, math, reading, you know, and just mailing them to the kids' house every 3 weeks, because we just had to do whatever we could to have some level of learning going on. Some school divisions didn't do anything. And, I already knew that I had some literacy deficiency, some kids that still needed to grow. And I wanted to make sure that our kids were still going to have something to do. So we really had to make that decision within like 2 or 3 weeks. By April, I was like, this is what we're doing for the rest of the year. I seriously thought we're coming back. Because, if you remember, Mike, originally the governor shut schools down for 2 weeks.
Right.
So had planned for that. And then on March 13th, he was like, rest of the year. We were like, oh. And so we had to do whatever we could just to kind of take the anxiety levels down of our school community, but also put forth a plan that was going to help to tie into the start of this year. And, all school divisions, at least the majority of them, should have set it up so that in September, all you're doing really is checking the kids' learning levels, trying to figure out how much learning loss there was. What are the deficiencies? Then you move into your current curriculum. We had to do some type of diagnostic, and that definitely was an interesting experience.
Yeah, it's probably ongoing too, because and like you said, it affects everybody different. From, like, I think my third episode, I had a teacher from Chesterfield, a guidance counselor from Richmond, and then a principal from Chesterfield. And we just talked about what was going on at the moment and what they saw as far as going forward. I don't know that people, even if you expected to not be in school all the time, I don't know if people could expect it what is happening right now, or even plan for it well. And that leads back to the stress levels for parents, teachers, and all educators as far as working in the school system, and the students, who probably have the hardest time, I would guess, because they're the youngest dealing with change.
You're exactly right. I mean, if you remember, I think you saw I did like 5 Saturday schools when the pandemic first hit. And I was trying to give tips to those exact same groups that you were talking about there. Like, the first episode was telling kids and parents, okay, we got to develop a routine. We now know we're out, develop a routine so that the kids are waking up every day. They're doing this, you know how long they're going to be in class. And then the second one was really helping the parents out. Now you are now the original school. A lot of this is going to fall back to the support for you. And that just took people's anxiety levels and stress to the point, because parents were still trying to manage their jobs while still supporting their kids. So realistically, when you look at this, the only positive that I can say that's come out of this pandemic is that I think people now really see the true value of teachers. I mean, it's not easy. They also see that they're underpaid, because the work that they're doing, the amount of time that teachers put in. I had so many teachers in Suffolk that were really working 60-hour work weeks now, because when you add in the emails and the phone calls and then the enrichment mediation sessions that we set up at the end of each day now, they're really putting the time and effort in. So people really understand the importance of education. I think they no longer take it for granted.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I've had quite a few people who, do whatever it is they do, and they teach in some form or fashion over the last few months. And they all, not they all, but a lot of them say that you have some parents that understand and appreciate what's going on and what the teachers are going through. Then you have some parents that are like, "You're supposed to be teaching my child. I'm not the teacher." I'm like, it's a change for everybody. So how do you even approach? Can you help a parent that doesn't understand?
We put together sessions and webinars just to kind of get the parents to understand. Number one, the pedagogy, the methodology that we use in school now is different when you and I were in school.
Right.
And we have to get parents to really understand that. We're using a different system now, a different program. There's more open-ended stuff. And then you had to kind of teach my elementary parents, okay, stop prompting your kid. We don't need you to give them the answer. I mean, you can hear them in the background. They're off camera, Mike. 4. Like, no, let the kid figure, and so just to also get them to understand that, we have some rules for them, staying out of camera, making sure you're dressed, just there's a lot of things that you wouldn't think a kid should have to go through. But the good side of it is the parents really also get to see kind of what their kid's structure is when they're not around them, when they're at school. And the importance for us is just keeping the parents involved, making sure you have that two-way communication, and just kind of walking everybody through it. And one of the things I've said probably in a lot of my letters, and then I do Facebook Lives for Suffolk Public Schools because my community down there just loves Facebook. So like we get like 7,000 views over when I did like a week and a half ago. And one of the things I keep telling them, okay, this is now the new ground zero. Don't compare this school year to 2 years ago. Whenever these SOL scores come in, this is 1998. This is year one, all over again. Because we all know there's going to be some gaps, there's going to be some decreases, and we have to be able to use that, because now it's really about more emphasis on student growth than it is on actually passing the test, which is the way it should have been. So kind of getting people, into that mode and getting them to understand, okay, we are now revamping the entire field of education, and we all going to move forward with it.
So these changes in your mind, these changes are here to stay, even when schools open back up eventually?
Yeah, I mean, because if you do this right, snow days really shouldn't exist anymore. Whatever the virtual learning model we're doing right now, we should be able to use that in the future for inclement weather. I'm putting into my calendar digital learning days, so that once every other month there's a digital learning day where kids are working on some type of project, collaborative effort, because the kids now understand how to do everything online just like we do as well, right? And while that's going on, we're going to give our teachers some professional learning, for whatever the goal is for that year. If it's next year, I'm really doing a lot of cultural responsive teaching. I'm definitely working on implicit bias with our staff, and then it may wrinkle some feathers, but this is what needs to be done. There's a reason why in the city of Suffolk, for example, we've had the same learning and achievement gaps, which people now call opportunity gaps, for 10 years. We've tried different programs. We've tried different, types of professional learning that works on a specific skill. But have we ever really looked at the relationship and the perception between the student and the teacher? That's the main thing. I mean, you and I both know if we had a teacher that was really engaged with us, cared about us, a teacher that looked at me and saw potential and doesn't look at me and just see, a young Black male, that is the things that a lot of times could help us just reach all types of goals. So that's what I think that we really need to focus on in my school division. That's definitely going to be a focus for the 21-22 school year.
You mentioned implicit bias.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I'm not even going down that road with you right now. I'm gonna let you hold on to that one. But we kind of can. Like, actually, let's go back. Let's go back to the beginning. Actually,
okay.
Were you born in Richmond?
Yeah.
Okay.
Richmond Memorial, I believe, and my dad was on the board, Richmond Community Hospital, for years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and my doctor growing up was Frank Royal, right there on 25th Street. So definitely born and bred here. In my condo in Suffolk, over top of my bed, I have a picture of the skyline in the entire city of Richmond and the surrounding areas. I mean, I just gotta keep home.
Go. Indeed. So when I go back to childhood, when I ask you about childhood, what comes to mind? Like, do you get the happy feelings, or is it one specific thing that comes to mind?
Yes, definitely. I mean, my childhood, I think I had it good. I was lucky. Both parents in the home. Grew up right there in North Run Estates, right off of Hungry Road. Strong childhood friends: Sean Warren Wright, Jabal Miles, Will Brooks, Titus Cutler, Sean Barber, Chad Morris. I mean, the list goes on and on. And we all stayed together, really through life now. And Martravet, Brooklyn Middle School, Hermitage High School. I really enjoyed Hermitage High School more than any of the other levels. Brooklyn was cool, but I got cut from the basketball team for some strange reason, so that stung twice. And then
Really?
you go on to start for 4 years. How does that even make sense? You know what I mean? But that actually helped to motivate me. But I really love Hermitage. The friends that I had there, teammates: Jerron Dandridge, Steve Smith, Holly Ponton, CJ Humes. I still talk to these guys, and we just pick right back up. just pick right back up. So, basketball coach there was Daryl Jenkins. Probably the greatest coach ever was AC Little, coached us in 9th and 10th grade. Mike, I had a 3-point record at Hermitage that lasted for 14 years. 14 years. And then Charles, can't think of his last name, number 23, light skinned guy, stroke it. He broke it. Mine was 6, and he broke it. He had 7 in a game. So, and the only reason I knew that because Daryl Jenkins was still coaching. So when I was coaching in Armstrong, he was at Hermitage, he would say, your record still stands. Your record still, and then one year, he broke your record. So yeah, man, probably identify with basketball more than anything kind of growing up.
Yeah. So yeah, understood. I'm the same way. Actually, we that's how we met. We met through AU, Richmond Metro, back in the day. I don't remember what year it was. Doesn't really matter. But
88, baby. I remember 88.
Yeah, the good old days, the good old days. So after Herm, you went to UVA. How was college? I guess so. Your family was what you would say a professional family, like
Right.
as far as their jobs or careers. Did that type of I guess there's an expectation to that. Did that type of expectation kind of propel you as far as going to college and going forward, or was it just some deep-seated stuff? Like my nephew is he's an assistant dean at Wake Forest.
Okay.
He always talks about wanting to do better than his situation as far as when he was a kid. So he always had that drive from the beginning of what he wanted to do. Did you have that, or do you think it was more a family thing and expectation pushed you?
I think the drive is definitely innate. I mean, that's always going to be there, but education was just so important in my house. I mean, my mom was a math teacher, then she was a math specialist for Richmond City, and then she was a principal eventually at Elizabeth Red Elementary right before she retired. Dad worked for C&P Telephone. He was in the development team, and he was one of the few African Americans that were in leadership roles in C&P Telephone at that time. But he also was a math professor at Virginia Union at VCU, on the side. And after he retired, the third African American to ever go to UVA. And so we're kind of like, we were one of the few legacies. It's definitely expanded now, but my sister went there, my cousin went there, Siobhan goes there, her brother, went there, my uncles. I mean, that Gordon tree is deep, probably at Virginia Union and UVA more than anywhere else. And we knew, I mean, you had the same message. If you don't keep those grades up, you can't play, or I can't play Nintendo, or I can't go outside and play with my friends. So that was really important. I have 2 older sisters. I'm the youngest. My middle sister, Donna, she's a neurologist in Dallas, Plano area. My older sister, Rhea, she's a college professor, science at East Carolina University. And so our parents stressed education to us so much that all 3 of their children are doctors. And we wanted to kind of pass that importance on to our kids, and also just making sure that we open up the pathway for others to follow.
Dang, yeah, that is awesome. A lot of times, I guess it's hard to fall off. I mean, obviously, you can choose not to do anything, or you can choose to be looked at as the whatever of the family if you decide to go another route, or less educated, or less focused on your life, whatever the case may be. You said it was innate as far as the drive.
Yeah.
A lot of that has to go to that, because I'm looking at it like that's crazy. That's crazy.
I mean, my father was a workaholic. I mean, he would leave at 9 a.m., come home at 7, because he always wanted to make sure it was right. And then, when my mom was a principal, she was working long hours too. But I just applied, I guess probably the work ethic that I saw them have is what I applied when I was working on my game in basketball. And then you kind of end up applying it to, your job and just what you want to do. And, when I was coaching at Armstrong, when I just people had talked to me back then about kind of going into administration. I was the interim AD there for like 3 months after Gerard Samuels retired. And I thought about it, man, I can just do this, I'm like, but I just still, enjoying coaching so much. But then I realized when I went to administration, the exact same principles that you use to motivate, inspire, and to really build that cohesion on your basketball team, you can do the same thing with building faculties and hopefully now school divisions as well. So a lot of those principles are very similar.
So you mentioned the coaching at Armstrong. You coached high school varsity for 10 years between Armstrong and Meadowbrook.
Yep.
And I would venture to say you were pretty successful as a coach, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it really goes back to when I was at UVA. It was the first time that I wasn't really known as John Gordon, the basketball player, right? It was, trying out, being on the JV, being basically a practice squad player, never knowing if you're a win, you're going to dress for any games, but still being with the team all the time. I did that for 2 years. For 2 years until I realized, okay, I guess those dreams of making it to the NBA are done. But then one of my friends asked me to coach his intramural team. And I remember, we were in men's gym, and I remember I was like, this is interesting. If you set something up right, and if you yell out the right things, I could see the game. You were a point guard, so you could see the game before it happened.
Right.
And these people didn't have the skill that we had, but they still were playing hard. So I would call things out and they would do it and be effective. Like, I still kind of got that same rush as if I was on the court and, hit a three in somebody's face or came down the lane with the left hand on them. It was just, I got that same vibe then. So when I first got to Armstrong, I was a JV coach for 1 year. Actually, I was at Armstrong when we had the school shooting. And unfortunately, Greg was the interim varsity coach. He was the one that got hit. And so I actually made the 911 call. I'm making the 911 call, had my palm, pressing on his gunshot wound, left hand, right hand on the phone, talking to 911 because people are still running. A student or a staff member, just probably can't really remember, rushes through and disconnects the phone. And so then you have to kind of wait, because I'm on my own safety too. I'm in the main office in Armstrong, and I'm talking about the old Armstrong on 31st.
Mm-hmm.
You got to wait, just to make sure you're safe. And I'm in the mail room, I come around, plug it back in, and then finally call back. So 24 years old, Mike. 24 years old when all that was happening. So that was another side of life that we really didn't experience up close, growing up in the Hermitage area.
Dog, I knew that you were there because my ex brother-in-law was there and another teacher that I know was there. But I've never thought about the whole situation and how it could have, affected you long term. Is that something that, because we've never talked about it, so is that something that you like plays in the back of your mind, or when you see other school things happen, I guess it has to trigger something in your brain?
All the time. So realistically in education, we have our first primary goal is to keep everyone safe. And, educating them, that's two. But we wanted to make sure that anytime I'm making policy thought process, you think of worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. And being involved in the school shooting is something that I wish upon no one. And, because of what happened there, it changed all the laws. It changed all the laws on everything that happened. Governor Gilmore came in, spoke from there. George Bowser was our principal at the time, and he brought me into the office and explained to the governor, John Gordon here, he's the one that made the 911 call. He was acting like a 20-year veteran. And then he looks at me, he says, your maturity that day and your calmness was amazing. And all I'm just thinking about, I got a man that's been hit. So you always want to just try to make sure that you put as many things in place now to be as proactive and not reactionary so that it deters any potential safety issues.
That's heavy, man. That's heavy.
Yeah.
Heavy. It's too heavy. let's get back to basketball. So, well, actually, how did that affect that season? What time of the year was that?
So this happened after the season was over. So actually, the crazy part about it is I was named the head coach, but I couldn't tell anybody.
Mm,
Um, while Coach Carter was out, we had to keep it quiet because he was his health. We had to make sure that he was okay.
right.
Um, and so we had finished the JV season. As I said, he was interim. I was named the head coach maybe 2 days earlier before the school shooting, but no one knew except for myself, the principal, and the administration, of course, and the AD. So we had to keep it quiet, and I had to keep it quiet for another. I guess the school did maybe another month, maybe 6 weeks,
Mm.
until he was kind of out of the woods, and then we made the announcement, and then it led to some tension because people were like that because his team won. They had Kennard Weish. Kennard Weish, whew, that's one of the best, most cerebral high school guards I've ever seen. And, unfortunately, he also had, I mean, God, man, he got shot in the knee that year and he was rescuing, they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, they weren't doing anything wrong, just gunfire erupts.
Right.
And, that's just, people a lot of times don't understand what these kids have to go through. And I was just always happy when I was at Armstrong, when my players showed up to school every day, showed up to practice every day. That just made me know we were doing something right. And that also let me know that we were keeping them safe.
So, okay, a lot of times I'm thinking about it, and you grew up professional parents, went to school, blah blah blah, feeling safe. What what made you go? I'm guessing you could have gone to a different school to teach. What made you go into the city to teach at that time?
So, my mom had a connection because at the time she was, can't remember if she was the principal at Elizabeth Red then or still the K-12 math supervisor. So she knew Dr. Harold Fitzer, the director of human resources at the time. And I had also did a lot of instructional tutoring in the summer when I was in high school and college.
Mhm.
It was like, one of my summer jobs. So when you get a family of educators, it kind of helps. And so I interviewed at Huguenot first with Carlton Stevens, who was the principal, who also was like one of my dad's closest friends. We went to the same church, but he had just filled the position. So I remember sitting in Mr. Stevens' office, and he actually calls George Bowser. You still got a history over there? I got John Gordon in my office, and you could hear Mr. Bowser, real boisterous personality. John Gordon, is that Marion Gordon, son? And he's like, yes, send him over. So I literally left Huguenot and went and interviewed at Armstrong on the same day. On the same day. And Bowser just, he's just so cool. We just kind of just caught up because he hadn't really seen me since I was like probably in middle school. So we just caught up. He hired me right there on the spot. So, when I got out of UVA in 95, got a degree in psychology, Siobhan and I moved to Eastern Shore of Maryland because she was working for DuPont. And I subbed there for a year and then taught fifth grade for a year.
Mm.
But I realized that elementary school just wasn't me. I thought I could make a greater impact, really trying to help teenage boys mainly.
Yeah.
So that's when we moved back down here, that's when I ended up getting that job at Armstrong.
So you did your coaching at Armstrong.
Mm-hmm.
You moved on to Meadowbrook.
Right.
Yeah. Were you more successful at Meadowbrook?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, Armstrong, we had some growing pains, man. I mean, my first year, we won 5 games.
Mm.
And I really had to reinvent my skill development and ability to develop a strong practice plan as a coach. That's probably the biggest jumps between my first 2 years. And my second year, we only won 6 games. But we upset Henrico to go to the playoffs in the district tournament. I think that one game may have saved my career because, people are like, man, Gordon, know what he's doing. He won 11 games in 2 years.
Yeah.
So we went 5 games, 6 games, 9 games, 15. And my last year in Armstrong, we won the Capital District Championship. And so that year was the year also that Armstrong and Kennedy were about to merge the following year.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest, we had a lot of confrontation in our school, and a lot of confrontation was also going on with Kennedy and at Kennedy, because you had a lot of groups of people that were getting ready to come together. And so literally my last 2 weeks there, we basically had a fight every day.
Mm.
And I was like, okay. And so at the time, there was two jobs that had just come open, Meadowbrook and Hermitage. And Hermitage had Joe Coulter, who was Jiggins's long-term assistant. But because, I played there and all that type of stuff, people were like, you need to go after Hermitage. Well, George Lancaster at Highland Springs was really close with Joe Oley, the principal at Meadowbrook. And when I talked, because, Coach Lamb's kind of a mentor as well. When I talked to him about it, he was like, you need to look at Meadowbrook too. They just built a brand new gym, the one they got now, renovating the school, tremendous athletes. You need to look at that. And so I interviewed at Hermitage first, and then Meadowbrook like 2 days later. But Meadowbrook had recruited me. They actually like brought me over to visit the school. I mean, they did it right. I felt like I was back in high school getting a look.
Right.
They did it right. And so when I interviewed for Hermitage, I had like no stress. And Hermitage went to Coulter, and I went to Meadowbrook, and then he and I still were good friends. So we made sure we scrimmaged each other, and we played him in some tournaments and stuff. And I don't think he's ever beaten me, to be honest.
Want to get that in there?
You got to slide it in there, But that was also my way to kind of keep an eye on the Hermitage program too. So at Armstrong, as I told you, we won the Capital District Championship. But at Meadowbrook, we won back-to-back Central District champions. And then in 05-06, we also won the region. And we were also the first team to go back-to-back in the Time Dispatch Invitational Tournament. So we kind of, the group of guys I had at Meadowbrook are always going to be really special. The players at Armstrong were really good too, but that team at Meadowbrook, we were deep. We were good.
Now, I forewarned you. I told you I was going to ask you this question, so I hope you had a chance to think about it a little bit.
Yeah.
It's probably not a fair question, but who is your, I don't want to say favorite, who's your best player? Who's your best player? And then maybe a player that may not have been one of the best, but that hard worker, just somebody that you think of when you think of your coaching career.
So if I could, I had been thinking about this because actually it's really 3 or 4 guys I got to mention. I hope that's not the top.
You're good.
But the hard working is Dwayne Dante Atkins from Armstrong, 6'2.5", could play all 5 positions, just could rebound, start the break. I mean, the way he would slash the lane was unbelievable, and he was really good there. The 3 best players I probably coached at Armstrong were him, Marlon Smith, who could jump out of the gym, LC Baker as the point guard. We talked about him. LC just you couldn't press him. Mm-hmm. I mean, he got out there running the 4-3. How you going to press him? So just give him the ball, and he just will get through everybody. Best player is Devin Johnson from Meadowbrook. He's regional player of the year, all metro player of the year, first team all state. He and I came into Meadowbrook together as a freshman. I started him at point guard. And his nickname, I gave everybody at Meadowbrook nicknames, and his nickname was Man Child, because this dude was built like LeBron at 14. And so, and could just, the bounce. I mean, God, the dunks that this guy would have, the whole gym would just start vibrating. Just start vibrating. Devin Johnson was definitely special. Most talented player is probably Justin Harper, who played for University of Richmond, played in the league for a couple of years, 6'8", could stroke it, just a sponge on the court. But that 01-02 team at Armstrong was really good. The 04-05 and the 05-06 teams at Meadowbrook, we should have won the state. That's the one that still stings. We lost in the first round at 05-06.
That's the one that got away.
That's the one that got away because that team was so good, so good.
Hmm. So earlier you mentioned kind of developing teachers,
Mhm.
and well, actually, first let's talk about the book. Actually, let's talk about the book. Uh,
Yeah, promo.
yeah, I have to get this in here. The Teachers Lounge.
Yeah.
Tell me, well, what possessed you to write this, and then what is it truly about?
So it's just like the reaction that you had when I started telling you some of the stories about some of the things that I've been through in my educational career. And so when I was the director of administrative services in Fredericksburg, I was the principal of James Monroe High School. I renamed it the James Monroe High School. Might got to give it an extra edge. I was the first African American principal in that school's 100-year history. And so you hear just some of the stories and some of the things I experienced. I was like, I need to start putting this down on paper. So it took me probably about a month to just kind of come up with an outline. Because, sometimes I may have some downtime, the night before a board meeting or something. I just start typing away. And so the Teachers Lounge really is a 40-year walk through the field of education. And it opens up with one of my report cards from when I was a kindergarten student at Marshall Elementary School. And it ends when I got the chief of schools job for Chesapeake County Public Schools, the job before I have now. It ends there. And so, I talk about Montrevat, I talk about getting cut from Brooklyn, talk about my, great years I had in Hermitage, the UVA piece, being a teenage dad. I had my son Marcus between my junior and senior year at Hermitage. And how that kind of lets you know that you had to kind of start looking at life a little bit differently because it's not just you anymore. And he beat the odds. Got a degree from Longwood. So this is the '90s. Like when Katrina was pregnant in Hermitage, she was the only girl in the entire school that was pregnant.
Mm.
So everyone knew, teachers, custodians, everyone knew. And I would go to rival games, and you know how those super fans could be at Douglas Freeman. They
Right.
will have signs. Gordon, when is the baby due? So it motivates you. It's a situation where I figured that I can maybe inspire some people just by potentially having some stories. And it's a professional learning book. At the end of every chapter, there's some exercises, some reflective things to do. Some pictures in there. You see pictures of how I got older. Mike, you remember back in the middle school days, we had the Mercedes Benz chains and all that type of stuff. Yeah, I had one of those. Just to let everyone know how pop culture also has a strong influence on the field of education. And so the book's doing well. It always does better when I get a chance to kind of go back out on the speaking circuit. Um, but I'm getting a lot of good positive reviews, off of it. And I'm starting to kind of put together a sequel to it. I think I'm gonna call it the Administrator's Office. I kind of started to kind of go through my, thought process. Okay, I'm gonna pick up right where this one leaves off because I experienced a lot as the chief of schools in Chesterfield as well, and so kind of pick up there and maybe release this one in a couple of years or so. But got to make sure that I take care of this current job first.
Indeed. Yeah, the administrator's office it's got to be the title. I mean,
Yeah.
that's perfect. That's perfect. So even more into the educational consulting thing, which is what you do also,
Mhm.
many things. You know what? I haven't even touched on the executive job with the governor. But anyway, the schools that inspire.
Mhm.
What is schools that inspire? And obviously, it was inspired by all these things that led up to this, including the book. I'm guessing. So,
Yeah, yeah. I
uh,
mean, my whole thought process is like my mantra is if you create the most dynamic learning environment for your school, kids will want to come to school every day.
right.
Staff will want to come to work every day. Like that's like always been, like my focus. How can I make it so that people love coming here? And so you're trying to create these inspirational schools. And that really starts with a strong climate and strong culture. So when I began to start my message when I was a principal at D. James Monroe in Fredericksburg, I would go to conferences and speak. And probably the biggest one I was speaking at the time was the VASCD, Virginia Association for School Curriculum Development. That's what it used to stand for, but now it's just VASCD. And I always had great audiences. They were time in because I made mine really, really actively engaging. People would have to participate. You would have to stand up. I would give prizes. Just do whatever you could so the audience feels that they are part of the lesson, and it also gives an opportunity for people to learn from each other.
Right.
So after a while, then I developed a course at UVA, Sarah Armstrong and I did, on really how to teach at-risk kids and instruct African-American males. And she kind of did the research part, and I actually added the practicality of what was happening, as a practitioner in education right now. And so the course was a success. And then, ended up being taught at Eastern Mennonite as well. And I was like, all right, so I might be on to something here then. You get good reviews when you speak. You got some research based behind what you're doing. You have facts based on what you did as a principal, as a coach, as a teacher, all these different things. You probably should kind of like incorporate it and just organize it. So I think I did it, I guess, about 6-7 years ago now. And so now when I speak, everything's always through schools that inspire. The book is, through schools that inspire. I recently did a convocation and kind of like get come back and be excited for Verona High School. One of my mentees, Darren Thompson's the principal over there. We just want to make sure that we're giving people the tools that they need to be successful in the field of education. And, I've done a lot of work. I was the keynote for the Virginia School Board Association Clerks Conference. I think people are beginning to realize, hey, this guy, even though he's only in his second year of being a superintendent, he really has had some experiences that can probably use some systems that can be duplicated in our school division. So, it's good to be able to share. That's really what it was all about anyway. You're just sharing what you know and hoping people can apply it as well.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned mentees. I was going to ask about your thoughts going forward as far as Black men being teachers, but you mentioned that you have mentees, which I should probably expect. Like, I should have realized that. But just thinking about, like, I never had a Black male teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a substitute one time, but
mm-hmm.
Not that I can remember. I never had a Black male teacher. So a lot of times, you don't see the examples in the field. But now it seems that things have changed quite a bit. And well, from the outside looking in, because I know a lot of y'all, it seems like things are kind of changing. Has it changed? Like, do you think that the influx of Black administrators and teachers has changed the overall outlook, or is it still like trying to work our way in, so to speak?
It fluctuates. I mean, in the mid 90s, when we were at that age, there was an influx. I can think of Craig Mayo, some other friends of mine that went into education mainly because our parents were in it. And you're right when you say, how many Black male teachers did we have growing up? I was lucky at Malchavet, we had a Black male principal one year. I do remember that. I was in elementary school. But I don't think I had another Black male teacher until I had Mr. Holly at Hermitage, and he was only my teacher for study hall. I just didn't end up having his class. He was track coach too, but I just didn't end up having his class. And so it means a lot. It means a lot. And that probably helped me out in developing the bond with my students and my players at Armstrong and Meadowbrook, because you had a role model. You had someone who they could relate to. My kids would tell me everything. I'm still so close with so many of my former players to this day, and they always tell me it's the relationships that you built with us. Mm-hmm. It meant a lot, and I was happy. When we were living in the East End, and Marcus had some African American teachers, at John Rolfe, when he was a middle school student there. So it's not as prevalent as it could be, and right now, our next generation, they're entrepreneurs. They don't really want to go into education as much. But I can tell you right now, we need you. We need you. I mean, there's vacancies with Corona going on. People are retiring early. They're getting out of the profession. We need you. And you also got to get past that perspective of he was just hired just so he could coach. Like, every Black male that's hired in education is not a coach. Some of them are just straight educators who are really good at their craft, and we don't have to always associate the two together. So it's actually been a little bit of a decline, like the last year or two. And so we need to bring that back up. You see so many social groups, Black male educators rock, stuff like that, that are helping to recruit. And that's one of the things, I asked my director of HR to do. We actually changed our whole recruiting map when I became superintendent, because having more, ideally in a school division, the demographics of your staff should match the demographics of the students.
Right.
And that is a rarity. There is a rarity. So that's something that we're always striving to.
And I do have to back up a little bit because I should say, I went to J.L. Francis to third grade, and we had a Black principal and Black teachers in the city. After that is what I'm talking about. No Black teachers from fourth grade throughout the rest of my learning experience as far as schooling.
Yep.
So, and your area, Suffolk, is mainly Black, right?
55%. 55%. Suffolk's interesting because it was, County of Suffolk and Nansen City. Okay, I hope I don't have that backwards. But in 1974, they merged, they combined. And so Suffolk is actually the largest city in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Square miles is like 489 square miles or something. It's huge. And so in Suffolk, there's really like three Suffolks. I have the southern part is probably more traditional, a lot more agricultural, peanut farms, cotton fields, things of that nature. Rural, right? And then I have central Suffolk. In the southern area, I kind of do everything by my high school. So Lakeland High School is more southern than Suffolk. Central Suffolk is downtown. Kind of reminds me of Fredericksburg a little bit. Small downtown, some good businesses, a lot of tradition. The Planters Peanut Factory is down there, for example. Kings Fork High School, that's that area. Then you have Northern Suffolk, which that's Nansemond River High School area. That's actually more like Short Pump. It's really a lot of stores, a lot of businesses, definitely a lot of developments going on, the fastest growing part of the city, et cetera. So you kind of have three different areas under one city. And so that also means you have three different needs sometimes for your schools as well as your student body. So managing all that is definitely making me a better educator in the process.
Feels like Henrico County. That's heavy. So do you think that this is your first superintendent gig? Do you think that this experience makes, like, if you were to move to another county, you think this experience with the three different levels or three different sides, I guess, do you think that would make another superintendent gig easier? Like, since you've dealt with the whole the whole gamut?
That's a good question. I never really thought about it like that. I know that I think what made me attracted to Suffolk is I had experience in Fredericksburg, one high school, very small, 3,500 kids in the entire school division. And so I understood small town politics. And in my role as high school principal and then director, everyone kind of saw me as like, one of the top people in the school division when it came to education. So I learned so much. When my mentor, David Melton, who was the superintendent that hired me there, told me, like 2 months after I was a high school principal, you're going to be a superintendent one day, and I'm going to help you get there. And so he gave me the duties and responsibilities, put me on committees, definitely put me out so that the city and the state could see that we got something building here in Fredericksburg. And then when you mix that with, okay, my last 2 years as the coach at Meadowbrook is when I also began my administrative career. So that 0506 group, I was dean of students for the first time at Meadowbrook, basically in charge of discipline, a lot of the duties that the assistant principal didn't want to do.
Gotcha.
And so the city of Suffolk saw he has large school division experience as an administrator in the building, as well as chief of schools when I was in charge of all 61 of the schools and all the principals and stuff. Mixing that with his small town background in Fredericksburg, he kind of has the best of both worlds of what we're looking for. And so I kind of came in with I did my homework on the school division for like 3 months, right? So I kind of came in with the plan of knowing exactly what needed to happen. So I kind of mapped that out as a part of my entry plan. And, my board is very, very supportive. I got, 6 board members that really are on board with everything that we're trying to do, gave me great evaluation. So I haven't thought about if it's going to make me attracted to another school division because I'm just so focused on getting this one right.
Mhm.
And all these kids out that need some support. I mean, with this pandemic going on, I still have, 3 or 4 schools whose neighborhoods have barely any internet at all. So
Wow.
putting exterior Wi-Fi's at the schools and the parking lots, opening up these parent resource centers. I bought 1,000 Wi-Fi's to give to the kids, in the home so they could use it. I mean, it's just not fair that these kids don't have the broadband that they need to be successful. That's something that I'm really working and we're pushing the city. Parents are pushing the city too. This needs to happen. Build more cell phones, expand this Verizon Fios, get Spectrum Charter to do this. You know, we partnered with T-Mobile early. A little competition doesn't hurt to try to
Mhm.
get some more of these MiFis and things. I mean, you got to do what you got to do to help the kids out. It's always, for me, it's always going to be kids first, staff second to make your school division better.
That's fair. That's fair. We didn't even, before I let you go, we didn't even touch on the recent appointment. So I have to mention that. I got to look over here and make sure I read it off correctly. The Education Commission for the State of Virginia. You were appointed to that group by Governor Northam a week or two ago. Well, it was reported a week or two ago. What's that about?
So that's really interesting because, I was very close to former Governor Terry McAuliffe. I was on a commission there. It was the Interstate Commission for Military Children, basically just to make sure that as our military families travel from school division to school division, when parents get new orders,
Mhm.
make sure their transition is as smooth as possible. So that kind of opened up my eyes to some things. And LeVar Stoney actually was the person that kind of helped recommend me for that when he was Secretary of the Commonwealth under Terry McAuliffe. And he chose me because I was the chairman of the Virginia High School League at the time. Um, I was the first African American chairman of the Virginia High School League too, Mike.
It's-
So, oh yeah, hey man, you got to do what you got to do. You got to open up the doors so that others can follow. So, being chosen for this, James Lane, the state superintendent, I think definitely recommended me. And we worked together when he was superintendent in Chesterfield, but he knows about my drive and my vision. And he also knows that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to identifying specifically the needs that kids have and a process to address them. So from what I read, because I had to do some research when I got the call, and before you say yes, you also kind of want to know what you're getting yourself into. And so I know that we have regional meetings that will take place if we were in normal situations in Denver and LA, Texas, and other places. And you're looking at different school division states policies, practices to see, number one, that's good professional learning for me to see if I can take some stuff back to Suffolk, but
Mhm.
also to really see, what works. And then based on where we're having our conversations with, some of these recommendations will probably end up with the new Secretary of Education. And so that your voice is at the table when it comes to developing policy for the United States Department of Education. And I think I was told, I think I'm one of 17 superintendents in the entire country that's on this commission. And, it just really helps me to be able to grow, helps you to have a seat at the table. It helps to put my school division on the map. Suffolk Public Schools getting some exposure, but it really, my mom told me, John, this means that everyone is now recognizing you as an expert in the field. And that made you feel good, especially coming from your mom. You
Right.
know, that made you feel good because I've been doing this now for 25 years. 25 years. And, you know, substitute teachers when I started, 5th grade, like we talked about, high school teacher, coach, building level administrator. I mean, just keep working your way up. Um, Probably as part of my personality, but at the same time, I understand what these kids are going through. And I've proven that I know how to inspire students and staff and have good communication skills with your school community, that's part of the battle to getting your school or your school division or your state, in this case, where you wanted to go. So this is a pretty big honor. This is a pretty big honor. My school community is very, very excited for me. I'm waiting to get the schedule so we can see when we'll meet so we can start discussing the current field of education right now.
Wow. Congratulations on that, my man. I love to see it. Before I let you go, I'm gonna throw a couple quick questions at you. You give a quick answer. You don't have to go into detail unless you just feel like you have to go into detail.
Amen.
All right. So if you had to give up one part of your game back in the day, would it be your shot or your hops?
I cannot give up the hops.
I knew you was gonna say.
Cannot give up. I got Eric Gordon just tattooed on my arm, Mike. I cannot give up the hops. I think that probably gave me the reputation, around here. John Gordon can get up.
Yeah.
Get up, a little 5'9". I was only 155 pounds, so it was a little easier to get up then. That's one of those days and months of riding my bike to Brooklyn Middle School to play basketball. Get your thighs and your leg muscles so strong. Putting two hands on the square at 5'10". People like, what? Can't give up the hops.
Understood. Do you have a favorite movie? Is there a favorite movie or a movie that comes to mind that you watch every time it comes on?
Yeah. Empire Strikes Back. We mentioned the Star Wars piece.
This dude with the Star Wars.
We mentioned the I'm the Jedi, GEDI,
Of course.
I watch that every time it comes on, but when I really want to laugh, Harlem Nights, man. Harlem Nights, Eddie Murphy, Richard. I mean, just the whole crew. You can't help it. Love that movie.
Indeed. I'm looking forward to Coming to America too. Yeah, I'm waiting on that joint. All right, last one will be, the Stranded Island, one album. What's your album if you're on the Stranded Island?
God, I gotta choose one.
I'm just mine is The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. I feel like it covers everything.
It does. Mine is going to be KRS-One. Probably My Philosophy. Just that whole album. That's 1988 right there. Scholar Rock just passed. I mean, I could identify with certain artists, growing up. I know you're a huge hip hop head. You and I have had a couple of text messages back on IG, on ELE too, but every song on that album, just from Teacher to My Philosophy, I mean, you just love it. Still in rotation to this day.
Can't knock anything related to KRS-One and Boogie Down Productions for sure. Any last words for the people? And again, thank you for taking the time to join me. I appreciate it. Of course, I mean, Schools That Inspire is your place that you can be found. But if you have something else you want to give, please do.
Yeah, definitely, man. Follow me on Twitter at DRJBG3, Dr. JBG3. Like our Facebook page, Schools That Inspire, visit us at schoolsthatinspire.com. I'm a little different because I have the same mentality I had when I was a teenager. And I think I use that to really help see things through the lens of a student. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that, we're all in this together when it comes to helping these students out, helping these kids out. Mentor a student if you can, take people underneath your wing, push as many people into the field as we possibly can. And then lastly, just enjoy life and have fun. I mean, you just never know. With this COVID stuff out here right now, you got to keep your family close, your loved ones close. I got the same friends right now in 2020 that I had in 1985. I mean, that's just how you should really keep it. And you got more people to come in.
Right.
I know if I get on the phone right now and call Sean Barber, CJ Humes, rest in peace to our man Titus Cutler, Stephen Williams, I can call these guys and we're just there for each other. And that's probably part of the reason why I still get my haircut at Laurel Barbershop, where I'm here in Richmond. You just got to keep everything within the family. I'd rather give my money and keep it in the same circle. That's one of the things I try to preach to people all the time. You need a service, you call somebody that's in our network, because that's the way you really build generational wealth.
100%, 100%. Again, bro, I appreciate you coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. John B. Gordon.
That's third.
Third, I'm sorry. Dr. John B. Gordon, the third. Source.